My name is Sabina, and I am 32 years old. I am sitting at table 14, the one closest to the exit door, watching my little sister marry the man of her dreams. I spent 3 months saving for this navy blue dress, hoping that tonight my parents would finally see me differently. When my father picked up the microphone and my mother stood beside him, I thought they would talk about Heather. But then they turned and looked directly at me, with ice in their eyes. Before we dive into what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop your city or country in the comments below. If stories about family secrets and unexpected redemption speak to your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to join this community. Now let me tell you how one text message turned the worst night of my life into something I never could have imagined. Growing up in the Collins household meant living by a very specific set of rules that I never quite managed to follow. Our family lived in a quiet suburb outside of Boston, Massachusetts, in a white colonial house with black shutters and a perfectly manicured lawn. From the outside, we looked like the picture of American success. My father, Richard Collins, was 61 years old and had recently retired from a prestigious law firm, where he spent 35 years building a reputation as one of the most respected attorneys in the state. He believed that a family's name was everything, and he spent his entire life making sure the Collins name meant something. My mother, Patricia, was 58 and had been a high school English teacher for 20 years before retiring early to focus on what she called her most important job-raising daughters, who would make the family proud. She had a way of looking at you that could make you feel either completely loved or entirely worthless, depending on which daughter she was looking at. And then there was my sister, Heather. She was 28, 4 years younger than me, and she'd been the golden child from the moment she took her first breath. Heather was a medical resident at one of the most prestigious hospitals in Boston, following in the footsteps of our father's dreams, even though he himself had chosen law. She was everything my parents had ever wanted: beautiful, brilliant, obedient, and destined for greatness. Then there was me, the other daughter, the one they never quite knew what to do with. From my earliest memories, I understood that Heather and I existed in different universes, even though we shared the same bedroom for the first 15 years of my life. When Heather brought home straight-A report cards, my parents would frame them and hang them in the hallway. When I brought home B's and the occasional C, my mother would sigh and say that perhaps I was more of a late bloomer. But the bloom never came in the way they expected. I loved to write. I would spend hours in my room filling notebooks with stories and poems, creating worlds where I was the hero instead of the afterthought. I loved art too. I would sketch portraits of people I saw on the street, capturing something in their eyes that words could not express. But my parents saw these passions as hobbies at best and distractions at worst. I remember one particular evening when I was 14 years old. I had entered a statewide writing competition without telling anyone because I was afraid of disappointing them if I lost. But I did not lose. I won second place out of over 2,000 entries. When the letter came announcing that I was invited to a ceremony at the state capitol to receive my award, I ran downstairs with tears of joy streaming down my face. My mother was in the kitchen making dinner. My father was reading the newspaper at the table. Heather was doing homework at the counter. I showed them the letter with trembling hands. For one brief moment, I saw something flicker in my mother's eyes. Pride, maybe, or at least surprise. But then she looked at the calendar on the wall and her expression changed. "That is the same weekend as Heather's Math Olympiad competition in Connecticut," she said. "We cannot miss that." I suggested that maybe just one of them could come to my ceremony. My father did not even look up from his newspaper. "Writing contests are nice, Sabina," he said, "but Math Olympiad is serious. That goes on college applications." I went to the ceremony alone. My English teacher, Mrs. Patterson, drove me there and sat in the audience clapping louder than anyone else when I walked across the stage. She took photos of me holding my certificate and told me she had never been prouder of any student. But in those photos, if you look closely, you can see the sadness behind my smile. I was thinking about the empty seats where my parents should have been. That was not the only time. It happened over and over again throughout my childhood and teenage years. Every accomplishment of mine was met with lukewarm acknowledgement, while Heather's every achievement was celebrated like a national holiday. When Heather made varsity cheerleading, they threw a party. When I was accepted into the creative writing program at Northwestern, my father asked why I had not applied to law school instead. My mother had a phrase she used often. She would look at me with a mixture of disappointment and hope and say, "If only you could be more like Heather. Just try to be more like your sister." For years I did try. I tried to like the things Heather liked. I tried to want the things she wanted. I tried to shrink myself into a shape that would fit inside their expectations. But no matter how hard I tried, I was always too much of myself and never enough of who they wanted me to be. When I was 22 years old, I made a decision that would define the next decade of my life. I had just graduated from Northwestern with a degree in communications, and I had two paths in front of me. I could move back to Boston live at home and try to find a job that would make my parents proud. Or I could move to New York City and pursue a career in marketing and content creation, the thing I actually loved. I chose New York. The day I left, my mother cried, but not in the way mothers cry when they are sad to see their children go. She cried like someone watching a ship sink, and knowing there was nothing she could do to save it. "You are making a mistake," she said. "You are throwing your life away." My father said nothing at all. He just shook my hand like I was a business associate, rather than his daughter, and told me to call if I needed money. Those first years in New York were hard. I lived in a tiny apartment in Brooklyn with 3 roommates and barely enough money to cover rent and groceries. I worked at a small marketing agency during the day and wrote freelance articles at night, building a portfolio one piece at a time. There were moments when I thought about giving up and going home. There were moments when I heard my mother's voice in my head, telling me I was not good enough. But I did not give up. And slowly, things began to change. By the time I was 32, I had worked my way up to content director at a mid-sized agency. I had my own apartment in Brooklyn, small, but mine. I had a group of friends who loved me for exactly who I was. I had built a life that felt authentic, even if it did not look like the life my parents had imagined for me. But despite everything, despite the distance and the years and the independence I had fought so hard for, there was still a part of me that craved their approval. That little girl who won second place at the writing competition was still inside me somewhere, still hoping that one day her parents would see her and be proud. That longing was what made me say yes when Heather called to invite me to her wedding. The call came on a Tuesday evening in March, exactly 3 months before the wedding date. I was sitting on my couch eating leftover Thai food and watching a documentary about ocean conservation when my phone buzzed with Heather's name on the screen. We did not talk often. Maybe 4 or 5 times a year, always on holidays or birthdays, and always with a distance between us that felt like more than just miles. Heather and I were not enemies. We had never had a dramatic fight or a defining moment of conflict. We were just strangers who happened to share the same parents and the same childhood home. I answered the phone with a casual hello, expecting her to ask about sending a Christmas card or confirming our parents' anniversary date. Instead, she said she was getting married. His name was Derek Morrison. He was 34 years old, a surgical resident at the same hospital where Heather worked, and he came from a wealthy family in Connecticut. His father was a retired investment banker, and his mother sat on the boards of several charities. In other words, he was exactly the kind of man my parents would have handpicked for their perfect daughter. Heather told me the wedding would be at a 5-star hotel in Boston on June 15th. She said there would be about 200 guests, mostly family and colleagues, and Derek's extensive network of connections. And then she said the words that should have warmed my heart, but instead left me feeling cold. "I would love for you to be there, Sabina. Not I want you to be my maid of honor. Not I cannot imagine getting married without my sister by my side. Just I would love for you to be there. like I was a distant cousin or a college friend she had lost touch with. I asked her who her bridesmaids would be. She listed 3 names I recognized as her friends from medical school. 3 women who had known her for less than a decade. 3 women who were not her sister. Of course, I said, keeping my voice steady. I would not miss it. After we hung up, I sat on my couch for a long time, staring at the wall and trying to name the feeling that was swirling in my chest. It was not quite anger, and not quite sadness. It was something older and deeper, a wound that had never fully healed. But as the days passed, a different feeling began to emerge. Hope. Foolish, stubborn, relentless hope. I told myself that maybe this wedding could be a turning point. Maybe seeing me there, seeing the woman I had become would finally make my parents realize that I was not a failure. Maybe this was my chance to rebuild the bridges that had been crumbling for so long. I threw myself into preparation with an intensity that surprised even me. I went to 12 different stores before I found the perfect dress, a navy blue gown that made me feel elegant and confident. It cost $400, which was more than I had ever spent on a single piece of clothing, but I told myself it was worth it. I needed to look perfect. I spent another $800 on a wedding gift, a premium knife set from a brand I knew Heather loved, the kind of thing a doctor couple starting their life together would appreciate. I wrapped it myself with silver paper and a blue ribbon. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, I practiced what I would say to my parents. I rehearsed conversations in the shower and in front of the mirror, and on my commute to work. I imagined my mother complimenting my dress and my father asking about my career with genuine interest. I imagined us laughing together like we used to do before everything became complicated. 4 days before the wedding, I called my best friend Margot to tell her my plans. Margot and I had worked together at my first agency 8 years ago, and she had been my closest confidant ever since. She was the one who held my hand during heartbreaks and job losses. She was the one who always told me the truth, even when I did not want to hear it. I think this could be really good, I said. I think maybe they are finally ready to accept me. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Margot sighed. Sabina, she said slowly. Do you remember when I met your mother last Thanksgiving? I remembered. Margot had come to my apartment for our annual Friendsgiving dinner, and my mother had unexpectedly called during the meal. I put her on speaker because my hands were full of mashed potatoes, I remember I said. She asked me why I had not convinced you to move back to Boston and find a husband, Margot said. She said you were getting old and wasting your life in New York. She said those things while you were in the room, Sabina? While I was in the room. My stomach tightened, but I pushed the memory away. She was just worried about me, I said. That is how she shows love. Margot was quiet for a moment. Then she said, okay. I hope you are right. I hope this wedding is everything you want it to be. But whatever happens, know that I am here. I will keep my phone on all night. She texted me again later that evening, just 3 words. I love you. I texted back 3 words of my own. I know, thanks. But even as I sent that message, I could feel the doubt creeping in at the edges. What if Margot was right? What if I was setting myself up for disappointment again? What if the hope I was carrying was just another form of denial? I pushed those thoughts away and focused on packing my suitcase. The navy blue dress hung on my closet door like a promise. In 4 days, everything would be different. I was sure of it. The morning of June 15th arrived with perfect weather, the kind of clear blue sky and gentle breeze that seemed designed specifically for weddings. I woke up early in my hotel room, a modest establishment about 15 minutes from the venue, and spent 2 hours getting ready. Hair curled and pinned, makeup subtle but polished, the navy dress sliding over my body like armor. I arrived at the venue 45 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to begin. The hotel was stunning, a sprawling estate with manicured gardens and crystal chandeliers visible through every window. Valets in crisp uniforms took keys from arriving guests. A string quartet played classical music near the entrance. I walked through the front doors and immediately spotted my mother in the foyer outside the bridal suite. She was wearing a champagne-colored dress with delicate beading her hair, swept up in an elegant twist. She looked beautiful. She looked like a woman about to watch her daughter achieve everything she had ever wanted. When she saw me, her eyes moved from my face down to my shoes and back up again in one quick sweep. Something flickered across her expression. Displeasure, maybe. Or disappointment. It was gone before I could name it. "That dress is a bit snug, is it not?" she said. "The color is nice, though." I felt the old familiar sting in my chest, but I forced myself to smile. "Thanks, Mom," I said. "You look beautiful." She waved away the compliment and gestured toward the bridal suite. "Heather is getting ready. She is nervous. Maybe do not bother her right now." I nodded and wandered toward the reception hall instead. I wanted to see where I would be sitting, maybe get a sense of the layout before the other guests arrived. The reception hall was breathtaking. Tall ceilings with cascading floral arrangements, tables draped in white linen with gold accents, a dance floor that gleamed under soft lighting, and at the front of the room, a head table for the wedding party with smaller family tables arranged nearby. I scanned the table numbers looking for my name. Table 1 was for immediate family. Table 2 was for Derek's parents and siblings. Table 3 through 6 were for the wedding party and close friends. I found my name card at table 14. Table 14 was positioned near the exit doors at the back of the hall, far from the head table, and even farther from my parents. I would be sitting with people I had never met, people whose relationship to the bride and groom was apparently more significant than being her sister. I stood there for a moment holding my name card, trying not to cry. A server walked past and asked if I needed help finding my seat. "I am the bride's sister," I said quietly. She looked confused. "Oh," she said, "I did not know Heather had a sister." Those words hit harder than anything my mother had said about my dress. I nodded and walked away before she could see the tears forming in my eyes. As the other guests began to arrive, I found myself navigating a gauntlet of relatives I had not seen in years. Each interaction felt like a small paper cut, insignificant alone, but painful in accumulation. My Aunt Barbara, my mother's older sister, spotted me near the champagne table. She was a stout woman with a loud voice and no filter. "Sabina," she exclaimed, pulling me into a hug that smelled like perfume and judgment. "Look at you. Still single, I see." "When is it going to be your turn? Heather is younger than you, and she is already tying the knot." I mumbled something about focusing on my career. "Career," she repeated, saying the word like it was a foreign concept. "Well, I suppose someone has to do that. But do not wait too long, dear. Your eggs are not getting any younger." My Uncle Thomas, my father's brother, was equally challenging. He asked what I did for a living, and when I explained my role as a content director at a marketing agency, he chuckled. "So basically advertising," he said. "Fun stuff. Not like being a doctor, of course. Must be nice to have a job without all that stress." I wanted to tell him that marketing was stressful. I wanted to tell him about the deadlines and the client demands and the constant pressure to prove my worth. But I knew it would not matter. In his eyes, in all their eyes, I would always be less than. The one bright spot came when I found my grandmother near the entrance to the hall. Grandma Ruth was 84 years old and confined to a wheelchair after a stroke 3 years ago. She had always been different from the rest of the family, quieter and more observant. When I was young, she used to slip me candy and tell me I had an old soul. I knelt beside her wheelchair and took her hand. Her skin was paper thin, but her grip was surprisingly strong. "Sabina," she whispered, "my sweet girl." "Hi, Grandma," I said. "How are you feeling?" She looked around the room with tired eyes, then back at me. "I am glad you came," she said. "You should not have to come, but I am glad you did." I did not understand what she meant. She squeezed my hand and leaned closer. "You remind me of myself," she said. "When I was young, nobody saw me either. But I saw myself. And you see yourself too, even if they do not. That is enough, Sabina. That is enough." Before I could respond, My Aunt Barbara appeared and wheeled Grandma Ruth away to meet some other relatives. But her words stayed with me, lodged in my heart like a seed waiting to bloom. The ceremony was beautiful. Heather walked down the aisle in a stunning white gown that must have cost more than my annual rent. Derek stood at the altar with tears in his eyes. My parents sat in the front row beaming with pride so bright it was almost blinding. I sat in the back behind 200 guests, watching my family celebrate something I had never been invited to be part of. The reception began immediately after the ceremony. Cocktails and appetizers, toasts and laughter. The string quartet transitioned to a jazz band. People danced and mingled and posed for photographs. I stayed mostly at table 14, making awkward small talk with the strangers I had been seated with. They were nice enough, mostly colleagues of my father from his law firm days. But none of them knew me, and I did not have the energy to explain who I was or why I was sitting so far from the family. Around 8 o'clock, the MC announced that it was time for the parents of the bride to give their toast. The room fell quiet. Servers stopped pouring wine. All eyes turned to the front of the room. My father and mother walked to the microphone stand near the head table. They looked polished and poised, like they had been waiting their entire lives for this moment. My father cleared his throat. My mother smiled serenely. "Thank you all for being here tonight," my father began. "Patricia and I are so proud to celebrate this beautiful union between our daughter Heather and her wonderful husband Derek." The crowd applauded. I applauded, too genuinely happy for my sister, even though my heart was heavy. My father continued speaking about Heather's accomplishments, her medical degree, her residency, her volunteer work, her kindness. He spoke about Derek and how perfect he was for their daughter. He spoke about the future they would build together. Then something shifted. My mother leaned toward the microphone and her expression changed. It became harder, colder, more focused. Before we conclude, she said there is something else we want to address. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. My father nodded solemnly, like they had rehearsed this part. "In every family," my father said, "there are children who make you proud, and there are children who make you wonder where you went wrong." The room grew uncomfortably quiet. I saw a few guests shift in their seats. My mother took over. "Our oldest daughter Sabina is here tonight. She is sitting somewhere in the back, which seems fitting given how she has positioned herself in this family for the past decade." 200 faces turned to look at me. I felt my cheeks burn. My hands began to shake. "Sabina," my father said, "has been the family disgrace since she was old enough to make her own choices. She abandoned us for New York. She refused to pursue a respectable career. She has no husband, no children, no accomplishments worth mentioning." My mother nodded. "We have tried everything. We have offered her guidance support opportunities, but she has rejected all of it. She has chosen to be a disappointment." I could not breathe. The room was spinning. I wanted to run, to scream, to disappear into the floor. Tonight, my father continued. "We want to publicly acknowledge that we have done our best. We have 2 daughters, but only one has made us proud. Heather, sweetheart, this night is about you. You are our success story, and we will always be grateful for you." They raised their glasses. Some people in the room clapped, awkwardly unsure of what to do. Others stared at me with pity or morbid curiosity. I looked at Heather. She was studying her plate, refusing to meet my eyes. Derek shifted uncomfortably beside her, his brow furrowed. At the front of the room, Grandma Ruth was trying to stand from her wheelchair. My Aunt Barbara held her down gently, shaking her head. I stood up. My legs felt like jelly. I grabbed my purse and turned toward the exit. I needed to get out. I needed air. I needed to be anywhere but here. Then my phone buzzed in my hand. I stopped mid-step and looked down at the screen. The notification showed a text message from an unknown number with a 617 area code. Boston. My first instinct was to ignore it. It was probably a wrong number or spam or something equally meaningless. But something made me open it anyway. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was fate. The message was long, much longer than a typical text. It began with a formal greeting. Dear Sabina Collins, my name is Eleanor Price. I am an estate attorney based in Boston, and I represent the estate of your late grandmother, Margaret Thompson. I apologize for contacting you this way and at this hour, but my office has been unable to reach you through traditional channels. I have important news regarding your grandmother's will. I stopped reading and looked up. My grandmother. My mother's mother. I had not thought about Grandma Margaret in years. She and my parents had a falling out when I was 17 years old. One day she was part of our lives, coming to birthday parties and holidays, and the next day she was gone. My father had forbidden us from contacting her. He said she was a bad influence, that she filled my head with unrealistic ideas about art and creativity. I never knew the full story of what happened between them. All I knew was that I missed her terribly, and that missing her was another thing I was not allowed to express. I continued reading the text. Margaret Thompson passed away peacefully on June 1st, at the age of 89. Per her instructions, I am reaching out to you personally to inform you that you are the sole beneficiary of her estate. This includes her residence in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, as well as her savings and investment accounts totaling approximately $2.3 million. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. $2.3 million. A house in Cape Cod. My grandmother had left everything to me. The message continued. Additionally, Margaret left a personal letter for you which she wrote in the months before her passing. She asked that I deliver it to you in person. Please contact my office at your earliest convenience to arrange a meeting. I am available tomorrow if that works for your schedule. There was a contact number at the bottom, and a signature line that said, Eleanor Price Esquire. I read the message 3 times, trying to make sure I was not imagining it. My grandmother was dead. She had been dead for 2 weeks, and she had left me everything. Memories flooded back. Summers at her cottage in Cape Cod, the smell of salt air and oil paints, her hands guiding mine across a canvas, her voice telling me stories about artists and writers who changed the world. You have a gift, Sabina, she used to say. Promise me you will never let anyone take it from you. I was 17 the last time I saw her. My father had discovered that she was encouraging me to apply to art schools instead of traditional universities. He accused her of sabotaging my future. They had a screaming match in our living room while I hid on the stairs listening. You are turning her into a dreamer, my father shouted. She will never amount to anything if she follows your advice. And Grandma Margaret had said something I never forgot. There is nothing wrong with dreaming, Richard. The tragedy is not dreaming at all. After that night, she was gone. My father said she was toxic and that we were better off without her. My mother went along with it, as she always did, and I was too young and too afraid to fight back. Now she was gone forever, and she had reached out to me one last time through this inheritance. I looked around the reception hall. The party had resumed. People were dancing and laughing like nothing had happened. My parents were at the head table accepting congratulations from guests who either did not understand or did not care about what they had just witnessed. 5 minutes ago, I was ready to flee this place and never look back. But something had shifted inside me. The text message had changed something fundamental. I was not the family disgrace. I never had been. I was the granddaughter of a woman who saw my worth when no one else did. I was the inheritor of her legacy, her home, her belief in dreams. I wiped my eyes and straightened my shoulders. I put my phone back in my purse. And instead of walking toward the exit, I turned around and walked back to my seat at table 14. I was not done here yet. I sat at my table for another 30 minutes, watching the party unfold, planning my next move. The people around me had stopped trying to make conversation. They could sense that something had changed, though they did not know what. The MC announced that the floor was open for guests who wanted to offer toasts or well wishes to the happy couple. A few of Derek's relatives went first, telling charming stories about his childhood and his dedication to medicine. One of Heather's bridesmaids gave a tearful speech about their friendship in medical school. I stood up. The movement caught the attention of a few people nearby. I saw my mother's head turn sharply. My father narrowed his eyes. I walked toward the microphone stand at the front of the room. Each step felt deliberate, powerful, like I was walking toward something rather than away from something for the first time in my life. Heather looked up as I approached. Her expression was unreadable. Derek shifted in his seat. My mother started to rise, but my father put a hand on her arm. They were watching me, waiting to see what I would do. I reached the microphone and adjusted it slightly. 200 faces stared at me, some with curiosity, some with pity, some with the same judgment I had felt my entire life. "Good evening, everyone," I said. My voice came out stronger than I expected. "For those who do not know me, my name is Sabina Collins. I am Heather's older sister." I paused, letting that sink in. I saw surprise on several faces. Apparently, my parents were not the only ones who had forgotten I existed. "I was not planning to speak tonight," I continued. "In fact, I was planning to leave. But something happened a few minutes ago that changed my mind." I looked directly at my parents. They were frozen, uncertain, unable to predict what was coming. "I want to talk about someone who could not be here tonight. My grandmother, Margaret Thompson. Some of you may remember her. She was my mother's mother, a brilliant artist who lived in a beautiful cottage in Cape Cod." I saw my mother's face go pale. My father's jaw tightened. "When I was a child, I spent every summer with Grandma Margaret. She taught me how to paint, how to write, how to see beauty in unexpected places. She told me that having a dream was not something to be ashamed of. She told me that my value was not determined by my grades or my career, or whether I lived up to anyone else's expectations." The room was completely silent now. Even the servers had stopped moving. 15 years ago, my parents decided that Grandma Margaret was a bad influence on me. They cut her out of our lives. I was not allowed to see her, call her, or even speak her name in our house. I was 17 years old, and I lost one of the only people who ever made me feel like I was enough. I took a breath. A few minutes ago, I received a text message from an attorney. My grandmother passed away 2 weeks ago. I did not know because no one told me. But before she died, she made arrangements to ensure that I would know one thing. I looked at my parents again. They looked smaller now somehow, less powerful. She left me everything. Her house, her savings, her belief in me. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I heard whispers spreading like wildfire. "I am not sharing this to brag or to create drama," I said. "I am sharing this because my grandmother saw something in me that nobody else in this family ever saw. She saw someone worth believing in." I turned to face Heather directly. "Heather, I am happy for you today. I truly am. You have found someone who loves you, and you are building a beautiful life together. I hope that Derek always sees your worth. I hope he loves you not for what you achieve, but for who you are." Heather's eyes were wet. For the first time I could remember, she looked at me without judgment or distance. "And I hope I continued that you never let anyone make you feel like you are not enough, because that feeling is a prison. I lived in it for 32 years. Tonight I am walking out." I set down the microphone. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Derek stood up and began to clap. The sound was startling in the quiet room. But then another person joined him. And another. And another. Within seconds, half the room was applauding. I did not look at my parents. I did not need to. I walked across the room to where Grandma Ruth was sitting in her wheelchair. I knelt down and kissed her forehead. "I love you, Grandma," I whispered. She squeezed my hand, tears streaming down her face. "I love you too," she said. "Now go live your life." I stood up and walked toward the exit. My back was straight. My head was high. I did not look back. The weeks and months following the wedding unfolded like a slow sunrise after a very long night. Everything hurt at first. The pain of public humiliation, the grief of losing a grandmother I never got to say goodbye to, the tangled emotions of a lifetime spent seeking approval that was never going to come. I met with Eleanor Price the day after the wedding. Her office was in a historic building in downtown Boston, all dark wood and leather chairs, and the comforting smell of old books. She was a kind woman in her late 60s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see right through you. She handed me an envelope with my name written on it in my grandmother's elegant handwriting. I opened it with trembling hands. "My dearest Sabina," the letter began. "If you are reading this, then I am gone, and we never had the chance to reunite. I am so sorry for that. I fought to see you for years, but your father blocked every attempt. Please know that not a day went by when I did not think of you. I had to stop reading because I could not see through my tears." Eleanor handed me a tissue and told me to take my time. The letter continued. "You were always my favorite, though a grandmother should not say such things. You reminded me of myself when I was young, full of dreams and creativity, and a stubborn refusal to be ordinary. I saw how your parents tried to dim your light. I saw how they compared you to your sister. And it broke my heart. I kept reading. I am leaving you everything I have, because I want you to know that you were always enough. You do not need their approval. You do not need their love, though I know how much you wanted it. You have my love, and that love believes in you completely. Use this gift to build the life you always deserved. Paint, write, create, dream. Do all the things they told you were impractical. And know that somewhere, somehow, I will be watching and cheering you on." The letter ended with 3 words. "I love you." I drove to Cape Cod that afternoon. The cottage was exactly as I remembered it, a gray shingled house perched on a bluff overlooking the ocean. The garden was overgrown and the paint was peeling in places, but it was beautiful. It was home. Inside, everything smelled like her. Turpentine and lavender and salt air. Her paintings hung on every wall. Her books filled the shelves. Her presence was everywhere, even though she was gone. I found her studio in the back of the house. The north-facing windows let in perfect light. Canvases leaned against the walls, some finished and some blank. And on the easel in the center of the room was one final painting. It was a portrait of me. Not me as I was now, but me as a child, maybe 7 or 8 years old. I was sitting on the beach with a notebook in my lap, writing something completely absorbed in my own world. The sunlight caught my hair. My expression was peaceful, content-free. At the bottom of the painting in her careful handwriting were the words, "She sees herself." I cried for an hour. Then I opened the windows, let the ocean air fill the room, and started to plan my future. Over the next 6 months, I made changes I never thought I would have the courage to make. I quit my job in New York and moved to Cape Cod permanently. I used part of my inheritance to restore the cottage and part to open a small art studio in town, where I taught painting and creative writing to local children and adults. The studio became a gathering place for dreamers, kids who felt different, adults who had buried their creativity under decades of practical concerns, people who needed permission to imagine. I also started writing again. Not for clients or for marketing purposes, but for myself. I wrote about my grandmother. I wrote about my childhood. I wrote about the wedding and the text message that changed everything. The words poured out of me like water from a spring that had been blocked for too long. I made new friends. There was Caroline, a retired art teacher who had known my grandmother. There was James, the owner of the local bookstore, who saved me a copy of every writing contest announcement. There was Thomas, a 35-year-old carpenter who was building furniture for my studio. Thomas was different from anyone I had dated before. He did not care about my family or my past or what I did for a living. He cared about who I was when we walked on the beach together. He cared about the way I laughed at his terrible jokes. He cared about the things I was creating rather than the things I had failed to become. We started dating 3 months after I moved to Cape Cod. It was slow and gentle and real. My relationship with my family remained complicated. My parents called several times in the weeks after the wedding. I did not answer. My mother left voicemails that ranged from angry to tearful to manipulative. My father sent one email that was 3 sentences long. "This behavior is unacceptable. You humiliated us. We expect an apology." I did not reply. 6 months after the wedding, I received a long email from Heather. It was the first time she had reached out since that night. She wrote about her guilt. She wrote about how she had spent her whole life being the good daughter, following every rule, meeting every expectation. She wrote about how exhausting it was to be perfect. She wrote about watching our parents hurt me over and over again, and never having the courage to stop them. "I am sorry," she wrote at the end. "I am sorry for not being a better sister. I am sorry for sitting at that table and saying nothing while they tore you apart. I do not expect you to forgive me, but I needed you to know." I thought about her email for 3 days before I responded. When I finally wrote back, I kept it simple. "Thank you for saying this. It means more than you know. I am not ready to rebuild our relationship yet, but maybe someday. For now, I wish you happiness." She replied with just 2 words. "Thank you." Grandma Ruth passed away a year after the wedding. She went peacefully in her sleep, and I was grateful for that. I flew to Boston for the funeral and stood in the back of the church, separate from my parents, grieving the last connection I had to my childhood home. After the service, my father approached me. He looked older than I remembered, smaller somehow. The confidence that had always defined him seemed to have faded. "Sabina," he said, "can we talk?" I looked at him for a long moment. I thought about all the years I had spent trying to earn his approval, all the ways I had twisted myself into shapes that did not fit, all the tears I had cried because I was never enough. "No," I said. "I do not think we can." And I walked away. It was not the dramatic confrontation I had imagined in my younger years. There was no shouting, no final reckoning, no moment of acknowledgement or apology. Just a quiet no, and the sound of my footsteps on the pavement. But it was enough. It was more than enough. Today, 3 years after the wedding, I am sitting on the porch of my grandmother's cottage, watching the sun set over the Atlantic. Thomas is inside making dinner. The smell of garlic and rosemary drifts through the open windows. My latest painting is drying in the studio. My book, a memoir about family and forgiveness, and finding yourself, will be published next spring. I still think about my parents sometimes. I wonder if they ever understood what they lost. I wonder if they are capable of understanding. But those thoughts do not control me anymore. They are just memories fading like footprints in the sand. My grandmother was right. There is nothing wrong with dreaming. The tragedy is not dreaming at all. And she was right about something else too. I see myself. I always have. And now finally that is enough. I would love to hear your thoughts on this story. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Have you ever received a message that changed the direction of your life? Please share your experiences in the comments below. Your stories matter, and this community is a safe space to be heard. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like to help others find it. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story about resilience, healing, and finding your own path. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, please share this video with them. You never know whose life you might change. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of this community. I am grateful for each and every one of you. May you always see yourself clearly, and may you never let anyone dim your light. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve it.